Well, howdy. My name is Old Dusty. I've always been called Old Dusty. Even when I was young Dusty, they liked to call me Old Dusty. Go figure. One thing I ought to tell you, I might be lying, I might be truthin', just don't put me under oath. I'm gonna take you on a semi-guided tour around the place I like to call home, Arizona. Don't let my driving scare you. I've been behind the wheel for going on 7 decades and ain't killed nobody yet. Yep, Arizona, the 48th state, the state without which there'd be a giant Arizona-shaped hole in the map of the good old mainland US of A. First, let's head out on the old Apache Trail, Arizona Highway number 88. You don't mind if I play, do you? You know, some people say my talking puts them to sleep. I don't know whether it's the sound of my voice or the quality of my stories, but whatever. Now, this part of Highway 88 was supposed to be paved, but the money to do that was embezzled by the most corrupt politician in Arizona history, Lester J. Ledbetter III. He just pocketed the money, and he figured nobody's gonna notice the road's not paved. At least that's the way I heard it. And here is a couple of the local buzzards. I think that's Tom and Harry. No, I'm just yanking your chain. They don't name the vultures. Not anymore. Not since Hungry Hank back in the 50s. They say Hungry Hank was such a mean old buzzard he wouldn't even wait till a person was dead before starting to munch away on him. Myself, I worked in the cowboy restaurant industry, first by accident after high school. See, the place I worked started getting a cowboy clientele, so they just went with it. Then later on it got bought out by a giant Eastern restaurant conglomerate. You know the one? They make everything from tacos to lobster. They made me a shoot. These fellas would call me the maitre d'. But that seems a bit French and snooty, don't it? So I always said I was just the cowboy host. See all these big saguaro cacti. It's true what they say, saguaros don't start growing arms till they get to be like 75 years of age. Don't that beat all? Some of these here are over a century old. The oldest one I ever heard of, though, is a saguaro about 50 miles from here, known as Old Reginald. They figure Old Reginald has been around darn near 2 centuries. Got his name 'cause some British ambassador of Queen Victoria by the name of Reginald came through Arizona and tried to take his photograph next to it. And, like many a foreign tourist after him, he doggone leaned up against that cactus. Let's just say he took home a lot more of Old Reginald than he planned to. Well, sorry to do this, but I gotta pull over and water the cactus, drain the dragon. You don't mind, do you? Here, let's take this shortcut, I know. Anyway, my grandpappy was the one who told me about Hungry Hank, the mean old buzzard. My grandpappy, they called him Old Rusty. He was a real cowboy back in the day. I used to hang around with him all the time. You know, now that I think about it, maybe that's why folks called me Old Dusty at age 9, 'cause I was always hanging out with Old Rusty. My dad, on the other hand, he weren't much of a cowboy. No cowboying left to do when he was coming up. He worked as an electrical engineer for a big defense contractor up there in Scottsdale. Name of General something or other. You know, making missile guidance system like the kind we used to whoop old Saddam's behind, or the Iranians. But anyway, he liked to make fun of the other guys in the defense plant who dressed up like cowboys. He called them Scottsdale cowboys, with their bowler ties and cowboy boots. Oop, this ain't the shortcut after all. It's the boat ramp. How about that? My bad. How about if we head up to Sedona? I know another shortcut. This here is Sedona, Arizona. Sedona, Arizona. Almost rhymes, don't it? This town used to be nothing but a wide spot in Oak Creek Canyon until some wise guy thought he felt something. I guess something spooky, like some new age spiritual energy supposedly oozing out of the rocks or whatever. The big spook central in town is something they call the Vortex. I'll take you there and we'll see if it makes us feel any better. Don't matter, though, as long as it keeps all them new age tourists flocking here and dropping their disposable income. One summer I worked as a OK Corral shootout reenactor down in Tombstone. Yep, surely did. One day I'd be Ike Clanton. The next day I was Billy Clanton. The following day, Frank McClory. One time I was Virgil Earp. Never did get to be Wyatt Earp. I guess I just didn't know the right people. Everything's politics, don't you know? The whole experience was kind of boring, to tell the truth. You knew beforehand whether you were gonna get shot and die or survive and live on in the annals of Western legend and mythology. I'll tell you though, the worst thing about being a OK Corral reenactor was all those dang 10 or 11-year-old kids who read through the entire brochure and bust your behind about it during question and answer time. This ain't where the gunfight actually took place, and that ain't the way it really happened. Geez Louise, kid. We gotta liven up things a little bit to make it worth your folks driving 75 miles past Tucson just to get here. Oop, I think I missed the turnoff for the Vortex. Let's just pull a 180 on this here roundabout and go back the right way. You see all these roundabouts? Shoot, don't need 'em way out here. I happen to know they put in a whole bunch of them just to make the tourists from Europe or New Jersey feel right at home. So when old Gunther or Pierre get back home, they can tell all their folks, yep, driving in Sedona is just like driving here. Now look over there, that's what they call an Arizona cactus hound. Nice looking specimen too. But now my grandpappy was the real cowboy in the family. For a while, then the big ranches went bust, and he started being a horse wrangler for them movie people in Hollywood or Tucson when they made westerns down there. He actually taught singing cowboy Gene Autry how to play D minor and G seventh chords on the guitar. I'm sure he learned all the rest of them good chords from other fellas, but dang if that G7th don't come in real handy when you're playing a sad cowboy left his girl song. But his biggest job on the movie sets was keeping the horses from pooping where the actors were, 'cause they didn't like to step in it. Anyway, Grandpappy said that being a real cowboy weren't all it was cracked up to be. It was like the lowest, dirtiest, menial job there was, kind of like McDonald's is today. Come to think of it, in his later years, Grandpappy really had an inkling for the McDonald's food, especially the McNuggets, way better than beans and such out on the campfire. Which reminds me, y'all ain't gonna believe this, but Grandpappy's favorite movie was Blazing Saddles. Yep, no kidding. The first time he saw that campfire scene, he liked to bust a gut laughing. He said that's exactly how it was in the Old West. Makes perfect sense when you think about it. Of course it was. Hard-working men chowing down on beans, salt pork, cornbread, terrible coffee. One guy starts up a tootin' and a pootin' and such, and then they're all trying to outdo each other and playing songs with their instruments. Then, of course, with all the cows chiming in, he said it was like a dang symphony orchestra. They make a big deal in these parts about something called Bell Rock. Well, shoot, take a look around. They all look like bells. And what do they call this whole area? Red Rock Country. Don't that beat all? I'm beginning to think the person they gave the job of naming everything around here took off from work way before lunchtime. Was I ever a real cowboy myself? Well, I like to think that real is whatever's inside your heart. But if and you mean, was I the real deal? Did I ever herd the cattle and ride horses and sleep under the stars? Well, only for a couple months back in the 1980s. See, after that movie, City Slickers came out. Well, shoot. Everybody west of the Pecos and their brother-in-law started their own dude ranch catering to rich eastern yuppies. I thought to myself, it can't be that hard. So I cashed in my 401k, bought a little spread outside of Wickenburg, then I put some ads in the New Yorker and Esquire magazine, and next thing you know, I'm in business. So anyway, my dude ranch outside Wickenburg. I only had a small herd of cattle, 3 as a matter of fact, and darned if 2 of those 3 didn't have mad cow disease. How was I to know you need to get a USDA livestock health certificate from every seller? No wonder they was so cheap. Sorry about having to stop again, but when you get to be my age, you don't put the call of nature on hold. It was right here at this rise in the road that I proposed to sweet little Mary Lou Finstermacher. She said no. Broke my dang heart, but it was for the best. I mean, really for the best. It really truly was. I'm not just saying that, 'cause it turned out Mary Lou was quite the floozy. Well, more than a floozy, truth be told. She was arrested for prostitution in Las Vegas. Don't that beat all? Well, shoot, they done closed the vortex. We'll have to get our spiritual New Age vibes someplace else. I guess it's on to Monument Valley. I don't take kindly to your racists and such. I mean, people that look down on your other races and religions and whatnot. I had this friend named Old Raymond who was a good all-around fella, excepting he was a tad bit racist. Not like your KKK or skinhead type racist, but just enough to keep you on your toes out in public. Well, sir, one day we were eating at a family-style restaurant in Flagstaff, and this group of African Americans sits down a couple tables away from us. Old Raymond says, like kinda way too loud, "Look, old Dusty, there's a table of BLACKs. And I said, "Whoa there, old Raymond, let me stop you there. I think they all learned how to spell." There are two different stories about the origins of Monument Valley, the real story and the interesting story. I'll tell them both and let you decide. Story A. Monument Valley was the result of a commission from the famous Barnum and Bailey and their buddies, the Ringling Brothers. See, they had this circus you might have heard of, and way back in the 1800s, they commissioned this sculptor named Phineas Q. McCusker. People just called him Q for short. Anywho, they hired Q to carve some gigantic statues to advertise their circus. See, first over on the left, he tried to sculpt himself a giant replica of the famous Jumbo the elephant. Well, sir, even Q himself realized it wasn't so good, so he tried doing it from the opposite side of Jumbo, facing the other way. See, over to the right of that first one, farther back yonder? Pretty bad, huh? Soon, Barnum, Bailey, and the Ringlings started losing faith in Q. So, they gave him an easy test subject to carve. President Lincoln's stovepipe hat. And, well, you see it there next to the two awful Jumbo statues. Looks like crapola on a stick, don't it? One good thing that did come out of this Monument Valley disaster, another fella, sculptor by the name of Borglum, saw the monstrosities that Q had wrought and said to himself, "Why, I can do way better than that. In fact, I could carve 4 U.S. presidents on the side of a dang mountain," and you probably guessed that's just what he did. Speaking of Mount Rushmore, when I was in grade school, I had these neighbors, the Barnacle brothers, Billy and Jeffy. To say they were slow on the uptake is a bit of an understatement. One day, Billy says, "I don't believe they just found Mount Rushmore like that." And his even slower brother Jeffy says, "Well, myself, I think they did." Well, okay, back to this other story going around about Monument Valley. Let's call it Story B, that all these rocks are just, what do you call them, magma plugs that done eroded down from some ancient volcanoes. Well, sir, all I know is Mount Rushmore is there, and this is here. So, you do the math. Now, when we get up to the Grand Canyon, I can show you the exact spot where we had our latest yearly tourist falling to his death. happened last month. His name was Ricky Carlson, 10 years old, from Akron, Ohio. He was making one of those, "Look, Mom, I'm falling into the Grand Canyon" videos when he slipped and, yep, bought the farm. His last words were, "Look, Mom, I'm falling into the Grand Canyon." A lesson there for all of us.